How to terraform space, probabilistic panspermia. I'm not sure if this is a theory. I mean, it's definitely, well, it's basically panspermia, right? So that obviously exists. Everyone knows about that. The reason I call it probabilistic, and this is the part of it I think that no one else has maybe suggested, is just saying, hey, if panspermia is already somewhat likely to some degree, which of course it is, right? Because asteroids fly all over space, and if they have ice on them, it perfectly preserves whatever's in there, which could be microbes, mushroom mycelium, whatever the case is. So it's probably not super likely panspermia, but in the entirety of the universe, it's probably happened a few times at least, let's say. So whatever the likeliness of it is, it's like, well, hey, what if we just accelerated that process? And right, because think about it, like, think of like Krypton and these things. It's like, okay, you have these really high-tech alien civilizations, and eventually they all thin out because you can't possibly colonize space with physical bodies. It's far too vast in distance. Even with a warp drive, it would, or being able to go at light speed, it would be still impossible. So what you would actually do is you wouldn't try to spread necessarily your species, but just multicellular life in general, because and that's the theory, is like, okay, where are all the aliens, right? There probably aren't any, and the reason that there probably aren't, or there are, but just not many, let's say, right? And the reason there probably aren't many is because it takes billions of years to get from single-celled organisms to multicellular, and that's just rare for a planet to be stable that long, right? Like Earth. So what you would do is you would just streamline the process from those billions of years to go from one cell to multicellular. And the reason it would be, probabilistic is because you would basically start farming and mining asteroids, that are in your, in your solar system. And you could even set up like you could set up like Jupiter or Saturn basically to be like an asteroid manufacturing plant. Excuse me. And yeah, you basically inoculate these asteroids with, microbes and like things like mycelium and whatnot, so that instead of trying to terraform a planet to get it ready for, something like humans or mammals or whatever, you would just find water planets and say, hey, just send in the frickin' kickstart, you're kickstarting it billions of years in the evolution process. So doing a system like this, you could theoretically just, these asteroids would float all over space for the next, billions of years, right? So it's like, and what's interesting about it too, is if you used mushrooms specifically and mycelium, because those would be able to go underground and really start terraforming the planet. The multicellular organisms that come after that would be actually very similar to what we are, but they would be perfectly adapted to the conditions on their planet. But a lot of things would be the same. So like, for example, the neurochemistry might be the same. And a lot of things about just the way their RNA works. So they might be very similar to us. And the idea is that as the multicellular aliens evolve, eventually there would be a species that it wouldn't necessarily have to be ape-like or even necessarily mammal, but it would be, an animal like us, not a plant, because animals like us come from fungi. So there would be multicellular or animals like us, but they'd be aliens adapted to their planet, but they would have our neurochemistry, and they would eventually become smart enough, find the mushrooms on the planet, ingest them, and, have all these mystical experiences and realizations, and maybe even be able to reconnect, because this could be billions of years in the future, right? But it neurochemically would be a very similar organism to us, so it could maybe connect to, all of the things that we've done as humans, and through our, psilocybin and DMT and all of our circuitry and receptors. Because on the chemical level, they would be identical. They would just be very different, and all of the other conditions that they evolved for. So, and that's why I like to call it probabilistic, because it would literally just be a matter of time, depending on how many of these asteroids that you made. And that's why it's so beautiful, though, is because these multicellular organisms would actually evolve to be tailored towards their planet. So it would be actually more perfect in terms of evolution, right? Like if evolution is to spread, you know, new life and find new genetic combinations, that would actually be the way to do it. And since neurochemically they'd be almost identical to us, you could think of it as spreading the same wave that we are on right now. Yeah, they wouldn't be exactly human, but it would be the same, you know, I don't know. Interesting idea. Would anyone like to work on this with me? No, it's going to be hard, obviously, but I mean, some people theorize that like the ring makers of Saturn, some guy, like there could be alien tech. You know, they probably would be living in orbits on like the gas giants or something. So there could already be a system like this, who knows? But it's kind of funny because like that would mean that we are the aliens, right? Like we like to think of like Anunnaki and Jesus, or Jesus isn't an alien, but whatever, the ancient Sumerians, ancient Egyptians, they all had their stories of, you know, pantheons of gods and whatnot. And it's like, we are actually that, and there would be multicellular alien species in the future wondering about us, like who we were. Like they're like, no, we're just random monkeys. Like we'd probably be dead by then. So who knows? But it's kind of funny because it's like, you know, God made man in his image, and it'd almost be like us making, you know, the next waves of life in our image, even though they wouldn't look like us exactly, but they would be in our image neurochemically. So I think it's interesting. Probabilistic panspermia. What do you guys think?